my name is Ashlyn Behringer. I'm an 8th grader at Sandwich Middle School. When I was younger, I participated in the One Book, One School, and I'm happy to read the first chapter of Imagination According to Humphrey. Please sit back and enjoy. Chapter 1. Imagine this! The golden dragon bent his head low, and Gil Goodfriend crawled up his neck. When the dragon lifted his head, Gil was higher than Tower Peak, which was the tallest mountain in the kingdom. It was after lunch, and our teacher, Mrs. Bisband, was reading a book to everyone in room 26 of Longfellow's school, where I live. She continued. "Hold on," the dragon said. "We're coming up." Suddenly, Gil and the dragon rose high above his village. The wind whipped through his hair. It was thrilling until the dragon suddenly veered to the right and swooped down low, grazing 10 treetops with his majestic, fire-tipped wings. One treetop caught on fire, but luckily the wind blew the fire out. Someone in the back of the room gasped. Miss Bisband continued reading. "Are you all right?" the dragon called to Gil. Surprisingly, he was perfectly fine. He was perfectly fine! My whiskers wiggled in the thought of flying over fiery treetops. Gil peered down as they soared above his house. It looked no bigger than a toy. In seconds, the whole village of Bumpshire looked like tiny dots on a white background, even though it was July. You see, Gil's village was a terrible weather. It snowed in the summer and flooded in the winter, and they had a big storms all the time. It was miserable, but no one knew how to make it better. "Only you can change the weather back to normal," the dragon said. "I'm just a boy," Gil said. "Why me?" "Yes! Why? I squeaked. The dragon didn't answer. After a few moments, Gil shouted, "Am I ever coming back?" The dragon boomed, "That depends on you and you alone." Miss Bisband looked up at all the classmates. My tail twitched as I imagined riding a dragon. The biggest animal I've ever been near is a dog. They are pretty scary and have bad breath, but at least they don't breathe fire. "Don't stop!" Slowdown Simon shouted. Miss Bisband closed the book. "I'm sorry, but I have to keep you in suspense until tomorrow." Calm down, Cassie shivered. "The dragon seems nice, but I hope I never meet a real one." "I agree," I said. Of course, since I'm a small classroom hamster, all of my human friends' herds was squeak. Boing, boing, my neighbor Og jumped up and down in his tank. He's the classroom frog. Maybe he's afraid of dragons too. "Dragons aren't real, tell the truth," Thomas said. "They're only in books. You shouldn't believe everything you read in a story." "There are real dragons." "Not now," Nicole said. "Eek!" I squeaked. Thomas laughed. "You have a good imagination." "But there were dragons a long time ago," Cassie said. "Right, Miss Bisband?" Miss Bisband smiled. "Some stories are true. They're called nonfiction. But other stories come out of the imagination. Those books are called fiction, like this book." "There are dragons that aren't imaginary," Nicole said. "My brother has one." "Really?" Miss Bisband asked. "Really," Nicole said. "Stop talking," Sophie raised her hand. "I don't see any dragons walking around today, but that doesn't mean they never did. Why do so many people write stories about them?" "That's a good question," says Mrs. Bisband. "Any ideas on why people may have thought dragons lived nearby?" The room was quiet for a moment. I had no ideas at all. I would never want to imagine that there are real scary dragons. Just Joey raised his hand. "Maybe people saw some big old bones, like dinosaur bones, and thought they were from something like a dragon. Maybe there was a forest fire and people thought the beast breathed flames that started a fire." "Yes!" Thomas said. "Then they started to imagine all kinds of things that the dragons did." Mrs. Bisband nodded. "I think that might have happened like that." I still wasn't so sure. The room was quiet until Not Now Nicole giggled. "Maybe we should get a dragon for a classroom pet, one like my brother's." It had been hard enough to get used to a frog as the other pet in the room 26, especially a frog like Og, who makes weird sounds and does some odd habits. But a fire-breathing dragon? No, I squeaked. The students sitting close to our table heard me and laughed. "Don't worry, Humphrey," Thomas said. "We're not getting a dragon, because they're imaginary." By that time, I wasn't even interested in an imaginary dragon. Tell us about this dragon your brother has, Nicole, Mrs. Bisband said. Her name is Pearl, and she's really beautiful, Nicole said. My classmates burst out laughing. I don't think what Nicole said was funny at all. She looked really, really, really upset. She is too real. I prove it to you, she said. I'll call my mom right now. She'll tell you. Not now, Nicole, Miss Bisband said. It's time for us to get out our math books. You can explain later. Usually I try to learn along with my fellow classmates, even though I don't have a math book. But my eyelids got heavy and I slipped into my sleeping hut for a short nap. When I woke up, I sprawled back and glanced across the table with a window where my cage sits. Og was in his tank next to my cage. I think he was dozing too, but it was hard to tell. Sometimes he closes his eyes, but he's not even sleeping. I told you, he's a little odd. I glanced down at the other side of my cage and was unsqueakably happy to see that there was no new pet dragon blowing hot smoke at me. Whew! Then I looked towards the front of the room. I don't know how long I slept, but instead of writing numbers on the board, Mrs. Bisband was talking about writing. This is my favorite time of the school year, she said. Today, we'll begin writers. I know you all brought up your writing notebooks today. Would you hold them up? The students all held up their notebooks, and each one was different. Helpful Holly had a big yellow sunflowers on it. Tall Paul's had a motorcycle on the cover, while Small Paul's had a photo of a space shuttle. I climbed up on the tippy top of my cage so I can see better. I saw smiley faces, princesses, polka dots, and stars. My friends in room 26 have a lot of interests. Once you start writing your ideas in your notebooks, you're on your way to being a writer, Miss Bisband explained. What if we don't have any ideas? Hurry up, Harry asked. Some of my classmates giggled. I mean, what if we don't have any ideas about how to write? Harry asked. We all have ideas, Mrs. Bisband said. The notebook is a tool to help you. Like a hammer? Fix-It Philip asked. He likes hammers because he can fix about anything. More of my friends giggled. Mrs. Bisband laughed too. In a way, yes. It is a tool to help you learn how to find ideas and develop them. Helpful Holly laughed. I think Felipe would rather have a hammer. All right, enough joking, class, our teacher said. To get you started, I'm going to give you an assignment. Start by writing. She paused to write on the board. If I could fly, I would fly like a... And then fill in the blank however you like, she explained. You can start now, but the bell won't ring soon, so bring in your completed work tomorrow. Fly? Without a plane? Cassie asked. You get to decide if it's a plane or a bird or anything you can imagine, Miss Bisband said. Then I want you to go write a sentence saying where you would go. This is the beginning of your assignment, and eventually you'll end up with a real story. She points to her head. Use your imaginations, and spend some time thinking about your idea before you start writing. I hear some sighs and drop pencils as my friends open their notebooks. Hurry up, Harry looked confused. Slow down, Simon looked grumpy. Calm down, Cassie looked anything but calm. After they wrote down the beginning of Miss Bisband's assigned, they stopped writing. Then they just stared at the blank pages. Do we have to decide now? Do it now, Daniel asked. Start thinking now, Miss Bisband said. You can share your ideas tomorrow. Just Joey shook his head. I never know how to start, Miss Bisband said. It sometimes helps if you brainstorm. Eek! Brainstorm? My ears wiggled at this word. Imagine having rain and lightning and thunder in your brain. Take 5 minutes and write down any idea that comes to your head, our teacher explained. Don't worry if the idea seems silly or impossible, or if you don't even like it. Write it down anyways. No erasing. When the 5 minutes is up, look at your list of ideas and you'll probably find at least one that you would like to write about. Then you can start. The assignment is only 2 sentences. How long do the sentences have to be? Sophie asked. Because sometimes a sentence is long and sometimes a sentence is short. And sometimes Sophie didn't finish because the bell rang and the notebooks were quickly closed. Most of my friends dashed for their backpacks and coats, but Sophie headed straight for Miss Bisband. I dreamed about flying all the time, she said. Once, I dreamed I flew into this island and all my friends were there. They were parrots. But they would talk, and I could understand them because parrots can talk. Oh, do you know what? Once, Miss Bizban glanced at the clock. Why don't you write about it, Sophie? I don't want you to miss your ride. Sophie looked disappointed. I'd rather talk about it than write about it. I know, Miss Bizban said, but you'll learn. She pointed Sophie to the direction of the cloakroom. When my friends dashed out of the room 26, Miss Bizban cleaned the board and neatly stacked papers on her desk. When she had her coat on and was ready to leave, she came over to the table. Good night, Humphrey and Og. I hope to see you tomorrow. After she left, I watched her out the window and waited until all the cars and buses were gone for the day. I turned towards Og's tank. Do you think dragons are real? Because, to speak the truth, I'm not sure. Og was silent. It's hard to know what a frog thinks about. Though, for one thing, Og has always had a goofy grin on his face. And if he does talk, he sounds more like a broken guitar string than a sensible animal like a hamster. This time, he didn't even say bong. He just dived into the water side of his tank and began splashing. I looked out the window again. It was getting dark. I had something important to do, but I had to wait. The big clock on the wall doesn't make any noise during the day, but it makes a lot of noise at night. Tick, tick, tick. Even an odd frog is better company than that. I waited on the other sound, and finally it came. Rattle, rattle, rattle. That's the turn of the doorknob and the click of the switch. The room filled with light. Aldo had arrived. Aldo came every night during the week to clean room 26 and all of the rooms in Longfellow School. Hello, my friends, he said cheerily. I hope you both well. I am, Aldo. How are you? I asked. I squeaked as I rushed to the front of my cage to greet him. Boing, boing, Og said. I am well, Aldo said with a smile. Thank you for asking. He went right to work, sweeping, dusting, mopping, and emptying the wastebasket. On most nights, Aldo's first stop to talk or even do a trick, like balancing his broom on one finger. But tonight, he didn't stop at all. I need to get home to study, Aldo said. The quicker I get out of here, the sooner I can study. And the quicker I get out of college, the sooner I can start teaching. After all, I'm about to be a dad. I already knew Aldo went back to college to learn to be a teacher, and I knew that he and his wife, Maria, were going to be parents. Of twins! Aldo works so fast, he's almost a blur. I was unsqueakably happy when he sat down to eat dinner with us. I was even happier when he pulled out a small piece of carrot for me, and Og seemed pleased when he threw some froggy fish sticks into his tank. Aldo ate his sandwich almost as fast as he swept the floors. Wish me luck, fellows, he said as he got up to leave. I have a really big test tomorrow. Good luck, Aldo, I called to him as he turned off the lights. Boing, Og said. The lights from the street lamp streamed through the window and gave my cage a nice glow. Once I saw Aldo's car pull out from the parking lot, I quickly went to work. I've been waiting hours for this moment. My friends weren't the only students with notebooks. I have one too. I keep it hidden behind my little mirror in the cage. It's a hamster-sized notebook that was a present from Miss Mack, a teacher I love so much, and I love Miss Bizban. There's a tiny pencil, too. My notebook doesn't have any flowers or soccer balls on the cover. In fact, it's pretty plain. But it's very, very, very special to me because I write all my secret thoughts in it. My notebook is like an old friend, and I can't wait to get to work. I open it and begin to think, if I could fly whenever I wanted, where would I go? There was a lot of places where hamsters like me can't go. We can't go on airplanes or field trips or soccer games or restaurants. But there are some places we can go that humans can't. Tiny places, like in between cracks in the floorboards or inside a little hamster ball. If I could fly, I would fly like a... What? I wrote in my notebook almost every night, but suddenly I couldn't think of anything to say. Use your imagination, Miss Bizban had said. Where are you, imagination? I squeaked. Did you fly away? But all I heard back was silence. There was nothing like lightning or thunder in my brain. I was wide awake, but my imagination had gone to sleep. Og, where would you go if you could fly? I squeaked. Boing, boing, boing! Og jumped up and down excitedly. I realized my mistake. The word fly means something special to frogs because flies are things like they eat. My tummy did a flip-flop just thinking about that. Never mind, I told him. I started thinking about things like a fly, like birds, airplanes, rockets, and flies. Airplanes and rockets are huge and noisy things that go way above the clouds and who knows where. Birds are squeaky creatures with sharp beaks, although it would be nice to fly anywhere I wanted to go. And I wouldn't want it to be the kind of fly that ends up in a frog's mouth. The problem is, I am happy living in my cage in room 26, seeing my human friends every day. I really like helping my friends. I stared at the blank page, and I guess I dozed off because the next thing I knew, sunrise was streaming through the window, and Miss Bizban was jiggling her key in the door. I barely had time to push my notebook and pencil behind the mirror before I could say, "Morning!" My writer's rambles. I have so many great ideas all through the day, but when it's time to write them down, poof, they've flown away.